It's a funny thing, language learning, because there are so many millions of people who study languages, but so few people who actually succeed, reach their goal, and learn to speak another language fluently. And if this is you, if you're struggling with a language project, if you've been at it for ages and you're sitting there asking yourself, let's get real, what's it actually going to take for me to become fluent in this language? And I think there are a few honest truths that are worth you hearing. The truth is that 95% of people quit language learning because they bought into some myth that you'd be able to learn a language quickly and easily, and it turns out not to be true. But I think there are 9 brutally honest truths about language learning that describe why language learning works, how successful language learning works. And if you accept these and practice these, you almost cannot fail to learn a new language. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what I think those fundamental truths are. I'm also going to give you a very sneak preview. Can we say that? A sneak preview of a very special offer that we are running at StoryLearning, so that if you've ever been tempted to learn a new language through stories, you're going to be able to do it for a very, very special deal. That's coming up a little bit later. So the first huge great thing to understand is that language learning is hard work. Despite the promises you see everywhere, there simply are no shortcuts. It's just like losing weight or mastering a sport. Are there some techniques that you can learn? Yeah, absolutely, and they matter. But at the end of the day, it's about a lot of hard work. It's going to the training field every day and putting in those reps. You would never expect anyone to become world-class at diving or swimming or playing the piano without spending years of their life doing it. And language learning is no different. You cannot buy into the idea that there is a shortcut or a way to learn quickly. It's a lot of work. So when we're taking on a language project, we've got to be real with ourselves and ask ourselves the question, what am I going to do personally to rise to this challenge? If I accept it's not a 15 minutes in the evening with a cup of tea job, but rather a serious, dedicated piece of work, what am I going to do to snap myself out of the inertia of daily life and actually apply myself to this language? And by the way, if you're wondering why you should listen to me, my name's Olly Richards. I'm the founder of StoryLearning. I've taught tens of thousands of people a new language. I speak 8 languages myself. I published dozens of language learning books. So I've been around the block long enough to see what works and to understand what doesn't work. The next thing is about your personal reason why, a compelling reason to actually learn. See, intellectual curiosity, the fascination with a language or the curiosity about how it works or what it feels like, that's enough to get you started. Often that is the thing that gets you started, but that only takes you so far. And eventually that curiosity will wane and you'll run into a brick wall and realize that you need something else to keep you going. And that something else needs to be a goal, whatever that may be. Moving to the country, falling in love, getting a new job and getting a promotion. You need to attach the language project to a goal of some kind, because absent that goal, there is nothing that's going to keep you going through those inevitable times where language learning feels like a slog and it's hard work and you're tired and you can't see that progress. It's the goal that keeps you going. And without that strong reason, you will quit. Very often I see people who like the idea of learning a new language, but there's just nothing underlying that. And in those cases, it's just a ticking clock. Sooner or later, they're going to give up. The next truth is about the power of consistency. Just like losing weight, just like learning a sport, whatever it may be, you don't learn a language in a 3-hour study marathon at the weekend. You learn a language by chipping away at it every single day. It's certainly been my observation that the brain seems to adapt very easily, very naturally with consistency. If you're exposed to something on a daily basis, the signal you're sending to your brain is, hey, this is coming at me every day. It's important. You better adapt. And it's always the case that the brain works away in the background, even when you are not actively studying. So the ability to practice something daily, even when you don't feel like it, and creating that consistency really is the foundation of language learning. It's just like in the summer, you water the plants every day. You don't wait until the weekend and then drown them. You want to be watering this plant on a daily basis. And so this behavior, this routine, this habit, if you just follow that, you will learn. Now, before we move on, our summer sale is happening now at StoryLearning, and there is 50% off every single one of our language learning courses. Now, there are 15 languages available. in this sale. They're normally $297 for each course. For this week only, they are just $147 each. That is half the price. Now, these are complete language learning curriculums. So whether you're starting as a beginner, whether you're intermediate, whether you're advanced, we have programs for you. The basic idea of these courses, just like with my language learning books, is that you learn through stories. We don't take a textbook or an app approach to language learning. You are learning with stories, which means that even though it's more difficult at the beginning, we don't shy away from that. We understand that it's difficult to learn a language, and so you're better off giving your brain the real deal at the beginning so it has a chance to adapt. If you've never tried learning through stories before, this might be a great opportunity. Like I said, we have beginner all the way through to advanced levels in 15 languages. You get lifetime access to the programs, and our sale will end on Tuesday at midnight. So if you'd like more information about this, you can scan the QR code up on the screen, or you can click the link in the description, and that will take you through to a page where you can get more information about all of the languages, the 15 languages that we have, and the levels, and then you can see if there's something that's a good fit for you. The next truth is that you must be speaking to real people. And yes, it's Captain Obvious over here, but you'd be amazed how many people I meet who are trying to learn a language from a textbook, from an app. They're treating it as an intellectual exercise, and they never actually sit across from a real person and practice speaking. AI is great. Textbooks are useful. You're going to learn a lot doing that, but they won't take you to fluency. You need to find real people to practice with, because language learning is not a desk-based activity. Yes, you've got to do the study, but you also have to spend at least half of your time actually communicating, because speaking is not something you do when you feel ready. The only way you feel ready to speak with someone is by actually doing it. And the trick here is to find what we call a safe person, someone who's not going to laugh at your mistakes, someone who's going to understand what you're going through, someone who's going to give you time to make mistakes, test out different ways of saying things, take time to remember that word you're trying to get to, someone who can work with you and not intimidate you. But unless you're actually speaking your target language on a regular basis, multiple times a week, you will never become comfortable at speaking. The next core truth we need to embrace is the idea of ambiguity and embracing the ambiguity. Ambiguity is when you don't really know exactly what's going on. Language learning never feels easy or obvious. It can do. In a textbook, the textbook or the app can give you the impression that language learning is easy. This word equals this grammar works like this. But the truth is that language itself is ambiguous. It's always changing. There are rules, but then those rules are broken half the time, and there are more exceptions to the rules than there are rules themselves. Language learning is ambiguous. The problem for us is that we've been through a school system which insists on us getting everything right. It insists on making no mistakes on the test, on learning a list of words and not forgetting them. If you try to take this perfectionist approach to language learning and to get everything right, to be the grade A student, what happens is you never open yourself up to all the nuances, all the exceptions, all the confusion that leads to those aha moments, which is when you actually improve. The truth is that native speakers of a language live with confusion as well. How often do you sit and talk with someone and you've got to get your words all tied up and you take all these tangents during a sentence? Ambiguity and the ability to say to yourself, I don't really understand what's going on. I'm not even sure I understand what this sentence is, but I'm going to carry on anyway, is absolutely central to the attitude of a successful language learner. You've got to ditch the perfectionism, embrace the messiness, and just carry on with the learning, with the speaking, with the immersion, with whatever it is that you're doing. The next truth follows on very nicely from the last, which is that mistakes, those things you hate, are your friend. Now, when you're learning a new language, you will make mistakes. You'll make a lot of mistakes. For a long time, you'll make only mistakes. You'll feel embarrassed. You'll feel awkward. You'll feel like a dumb teenager that's trying to express themselves when you're trying to talk to that person in the other language. But making mistakes is the pathway to ironing out those mistakes and eventually understanding what is correct in the language. If you allow yourself to be affected by mistakes, if you allow yourself to get embarrassed or to feel awkward when you make a mistake in a conversation, that is going to stop your progress dead. Because the way that we learn is through making mistakes. It's through forging our way through a sentence, through a conversation, in spite of the mistakes. It's through making the mistakes that we improve. And so we're not saying that mistakes are good or mistakes are right. We're saying it's necessary to make those mistakes. You can't avoid them. And your attitude to those mistakes is going to define how successful you are. You could do a lot worse than say, hey, I'm going to go and make as many mistakes as possible in this conversation and just watch what happens. Because the chances are that if you embrace those mistakes, you'll end up pushing through and getting way further through the conversation than you otherwise would have done. Mistakes are your friend. Now we're going to get a little bit technical with the next truth, which is that input beats output every time. Now, what is input and output? So input is when you read or listen to something. It's coming into your brain from the outside. Output is when you use the language. So when you write something down or when you speak it. Now, in order to learn a language, we have to have huge amounts of input. We can only learn through immersion of some kind, which means reading a lot or listening a lot. Watching TV counts. Being in an immersion environment in a foreign country counts because we're just surrounded by the language. But this is important because most people approach language as a memory game. They think that the way to learn a language is by memorizing thousands of words, or else a study game, saying, look, I have to study all these grammar rules in the textbook. But the truth about any language is that there is a huge, gigantic, there's a colossal amount of information in any language. There's so many words, there's so much grammar, there's so much cultural nuance. It's a huge learning task that we can't achieve by rote memorization. Now, in the early days of learning a language, you can achieve a decent amount through memorization. So you can learn 5 words here, 5 words there, asking where the bathroom is, ordering some food, and you'll feel like you're making progress. What you don't see is it's like an iceberg. All that stuff that you're learning in the early days of a language is the tip of the iceberg, and there's a colossal amount underneath the water that you don't see. And this is why language learning seems to take so long, because we don't realize just how much there is to learn. The most important thing to understand here is that you cannot study and memorize your way through the body of a language. There's just too much of it, which means instead you have to get huge amounts of input through listening and reading. Then you let your brain kind of sort it out in the background. If you watch a movie or if you read a book or listen to a podcast, you're getting exposed to thousands of words during that time. And you might not understand all of it, but you're giving your brain the opportunity to soak it up when you are not paying active attention yourself. The idea here is that you want to be flooding your brain with as much as possible and trust that you will pick it up over time. This is the idea of an input-based approach to language learning. And this is what we teach at StoryLearning, for example, where on day one of learning a new language, you get a story. And you won't understand all of it right at the beginning, but that's okay because we want you to be reading and listening, getting used to the sights and sounds of a language, because it's only through that input that you stand a chance of ever getting enough information to be able to learn that language. If you want to learn a little bit more about how the input-based, story-based approach to language learning works, I have a free StoryLearning Fluency Kit, which is linked in the description. You can download that. It's completely free, and there's a bunch of tools and worksheets and things like that that will show you how this method works. Link in the description or QR code on the screen. The next truth is that you really must focus on just one language. Now, if you are just learning one language, then fine, you're okay. But I meet a lot of people who kind of enjoy learning 2, 3, 4 languages at once. Now, let me be clear. I have nothing against learning multiple languages. As the famous saying goes, a language is the only thing in the world that is worth knowing badly. So I am totally fine if you want to learn multiple languages. Just understand that with every additional language that you study, you are holding back your progress in the main language. Progress in a language, your ability to learn a language quickly, comes from focus. So the more you focus, the more you're going to learn. So what we want to do in our study routines and our study habits is maximize our depth of focus. So you're not kind of studying in the living room with kids running around and all that stuff. You're locked away with your phone off and the door closed, and you're focusing, because that is how you give your brain the right environment to actually learn. So in order to maximize focus, we cannot be learning multiple languages at the same time. So if the goal is, which it might not be for you, but if the goal is to really make progress in my language of choice, then you've got to be focusing on just one language and put the other languages on the back burner for later. They're not going anywhere, but if you want to learn that language, you've got to be focused on one. Successful language learners go deep, not wide. I've learned 8 languages, and I've done them one at a time, with each one taking a year or 2 or sometimes longer. I've never gone at multiple languages at the same time. That ain't the way to go. Now, the next truth is that vocabulary is more important than grammar. So bold statement, but before you rush to the comments and tell me why that's nonsense, let me explain. Most people make the mistake of thinking that grammar is everything. Why is that? Well, it's mostly because at school, all we had was grammar lessons. Here's the present perfect, and here's the conditional, and here's the blah, 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 blah. We think that grammar is everything. The reason that our teachers and schools and textbooks tend to teach grammar is because it's the only thing that really works in that school textbook context. If you open up a book and there's like a list of 2,000 words to learn, you're not going to get very far, are you? But grammar is something that feels like it can be studied. You can learn a rule and then do some exercises, so it's convenient to teach and it feels useful to learn. But the problem with this is that most communication in any language is not about the grammar. It might be 5% grammar, but 95% of the actual communication, the understanding that comes from two humans speaking to each other, comes from the words being used. If I say to you, tomorrow go I supermarket, wine buy, you understand what I'm saying, right? There's not a shred of grammar in there anywhere, but I'm communicating through the vocabulary. On the flip side, if I were to just use grammar, but I didn't know the words, I haven't got a hope of communicating anything. So grammar is very important in the grand scheme of learning a language to fluency, but if you're stuck and not making progress at the earlier stages of a language, then I suggest you focus purely on vocabulary, because then you're just going to see leaps and bounds in your ability to communicate. Best way to learn lots of vocabulary is through what we said earlier, input. That means lots of listening, lots of reading, but also speaking to people, because although you don't learn anything when you yourself speak, when the person you're speaking to replies, well, now you're hearing new things and you can learn. So we want to be doing all of those things in order to learn as much vocabulary as possible and not worry about the grammar. The grammar will take care of itself as your language level improves. Now, here's a quick bonus truth that I've decided to smuggle in right at the end. Good enough beats perfect. I've noticed a pattern among language learners that we tend to think that there is some material out there, some new course, some fancy app, some method, that if we can only find it, that will be the solution to all of our language problems. It comes from this idea that there is a secret method or a secret tool that's going to help us learn faster. But as we already know, that doesn't exist. Learning a language comes from a lot of consistency, a lot of focus, and a lot of focus on vocabulary and speaking with people. And so if you are someone who tends to jump from textbook to course to app to all these different things, understand that you don't need the perfect material. All you need is the thing that you like. If you've got a dusty old textbook on the shelf, I've got some textbooks back there on my shelf from the 1930s, and they're old as hell, but I quite like them. And it's not modern, it's not cutting edge, there's nothing new about it. But because I like it, I'm gonna use it, and that's the main thing. So whatever you've got on your desk, on your computer, on your phone that you like, it's good enough. Stop searching for the next magic thing, the next special method, the next shiny object. Just start using the resources that you've got, that you like, and use them to death. Go through them and exploit them mercilessly until you've studied them through and through. Because we're not looking for perfect, we're looking for consistency and focus. So after all of this, you might be thinking, wow, that sounds really hard. I'm not sure if I'm cut out for this. Just remember that people who succeed at languages and become fluent in another language, they don't find it easy. They just decide that it's worth it. So stop looking for the easy way, start doing what works, what's right in front of you, and just commit to it. And one final reminder, our summer sale at StoryLearning is now live. So if you'd like to try our famous story-based method to learn or to improve a new language, well, you can get 50% off everything. The link is in the description. And if you'd like to know how to start learning a new language from scratch, following the kind of methods that I've told you about in this video, then you might like to watch this video over here, which shows you my starting from scratch method from the beginning, because that's the whole point, from beginning to end, shows you how to learn a new language. Go and check it out.